Do you resonate with your prospects? Why? Or are you mired in how and what? Because how and what doesn't get the job done. Hint, how and what do not get the job done. It's why, okay? So ask yourself, what value do you provide your customers? Why should they even care? Do you focus on the money? A lot of people do. We can save you money. They've heard that before. Remember, it's not just about utility cost benefits. It's not even just about the non-financial benefits. The stuff that's going to hit them the most is the non-utility cost financial benefits. And I'll give you some examples of those in a moment. So why might your prospect be interested in your solutions? A lot of people say, well, he wants to save energy. In some cases, that's absolutely true. Purpose-driven nonprofits, for example, who are trying to reduce their footprint, they may say, you know what, save energy for us. Maybe an industrial process engineer will say, I'm made of efficiency, you have to reduce the energy input of my product. Some people say, I'm saving money, right? But a lot of people overemphasize, they tend to overemphasize the value of saving money. They say, well, everybody wants to save money. Guess what? Seth Godin. I won't ask for a show of hands how many people have heard of Seth Godin, but those of you who haven't heard it, I'd write this down and look him up immediately. Seth Godin, S-E-T-H-G-O-D-I-N, one of the world's most brilliant marketing people, written 15 bestsellers on how to market to consumer products. A lot of what he says is directly applicable to what we do in our business. He says, you know, on the continuum of 6 reasons that B2B people say yes in B2B transactions, number 1, avoiding risk. Number 2, avoiding hassle. Somewhere between 3, 4, and 5 is gaining praise. Number 6 is saving money. Think about that the next time you give a 150-page proposal calibrated in acronyms that no one can understand if they're not in your industry, and see how much risk and hassle outweighs saving money. Could those savings be reframed to be even more compelling? Let's say you do recognize that there's some money to be saved. Could you at least reframe it to make it a little bit more sexy? Okay? Because remember, in many cases, the person who gets these savings doesn't actually get them. His boss does, or some other department does, right? Had a great conversation with a rock star, and one of the gentlemen said, you know, I sell savings, but what I really sell is what they could do with the savings. And he explained to me that if he saves $350,000 a year for a large laboratory doing medical research, he doesn't say, I'm going to save you $350,000 a year. He says, I'm going to save you $350,000 a year, which will buy you 7 more $50,000 researchers. And in fact, it's kind of the equivalent of your not having to apply for and win an NIH grant for $350,000. And in fact, since my control system lasts 20 years, it's as if I handed you 20 years worth of winning grants that you never had to apply for. Kind of interesting. Could other financial benefits far outweigh the utility cost savings? If you assume that the average employee in America makes $40,000 a year, and you assume that according to AIA, they're stacking these people in open office environments at 5 people per 1,000, that means that your salary is $200 a square foot. In most places in the country, that's 100 times the utility bill. 100 times. Which means if you just increase your efficiency, increase the productivity by 1%, you've essentially eliminated the company's electric bill. I should say more broadly, the utility bill. Okay? Now, how much difference would you have to do to get a 1% increase in productivity? It turns out, if you do the math, it's making someone more productive for 6 minutes a day. Now, for those of you who specialize in thermal comfort in office buildings, you probably already know that the #1 tenant complaint, according to the BOMA, Building Owners and Managers Association, 9 billion square feet of members internationally, the Kingsley Tenant Satisfaction Survey says that the #1 complaint in office building environments is too hot, too cold. Do you think you could do something about that? What do you think happens when someone says, oh, it's freezing, it's July, they have the air conditioning up too high, even my 1,200-watt space heater is not doing the job, I got to get up and get a cup of tea or coffee. So they go to the restroom or the staff room and they say, you know what, God, it's so freezing here, come with me. Come, you two, come. You know what? This coffee sucks. We're going to Starbucks. We're leaving the building. So they take 3 employees with them and they can fetch for the next 20 minutes, waiting in line for a $12 double decaf macchiato, double twist of lemon with dry foam, and it's crazy. Okay. In case you think that the 1% productivity increase is gilding the lily, here are the statistics. Green in the building in the bottom line, Lockheed, West Bend, ING, Verifone. These are companies you know the names of. They have ones in those percentage increases, but they're not 1. It's 15%, 16%, 15%. 40% drop in absenteeism. What do you think that does to your bottom line? Here's a fun thing that you'll remember. Got simple payback period, a play on the got milk. Apparently there's a study in Texas of an agricultural milking barn that changed from fluorescent to LED lights. 4-year payback. Not so sexiest payback, but hey, that's the best you could do. The Texas utility rates are not the highest in the country, and neither are the rebates, the most generous. So an enterprising dairyman, in the wake of this retrofit, notices that the cows are producing 6% more milk. Who knew that happy cows were other places than California? Turns out that the happy cows were, because they're more relaxed under LED light. And it turns out that when you add in the increase in milk production, the payback goes from 4 years to 3 months. Go figure. How about those of you who do business in schools? There's a lot of anecdotal and empirical evidence that talks about how energy efficiency directly affects the attendance, and not just of students, of teachers as well. It decreases absenteeism. It decreases presenteeism, which is a term that you probably never felt that was legal to use in Scrabble, but is actually a real word. Presenteeism is when you go to work sick and you're suboptimal in your production, you probably get other people sick as well. So in any case, you've got all these things. A lot of school districts around the country actually pay school subsidies based on the number of butts and seats. So in fact, I have a colleague of mine whose son, when he misses a day of school, she writes the school district a check for $43 because she feels guilty about the state subsidy that she's deprived the school as a result of her son's absence. Think about this. Imagine you have a 75,000 square foot school. Imagine it has 1,000 students. Imagine what you do to improve the comfort and convenience of that school increases attendance by 5%. 5% times 1,000 square feet, or 1,000 students, it's 50 students. 50 times 40 is 2,000. 200 school days is how much? A lot of money is what it is. It's $400,000 a year. Do you think what you did from an energy saving standpoint is better or worse than the $400,000 that they will get from the additional school subsidies as a result of making the building more comfortable? We tell our efficiency sales ninjas, you know, if you take the time to connect the dots, that is what's genuinely persuasive. And so if you take this example, for example, one of the people going through the sales training said, you know, it's really funny you should say that. When I started my sales career, I started by selling anti-violence programs for kids in high schools. And I'd go to the principals, I'd say, you know, we have this program that will reduce the violence in your schools. And he said, how much does the program cost? She said, $9,000. The principal would typically recoil and say, lady, I don't even have enough money to buy the chains to lock the doors to keep the drug dealers out in the middle of the day. Where am I going to get $9,000? And she backed up and she did this. She said, you know, let me, just with all due respect, how many fistfights did you have last month? He said, oh my God, don't even get me started. She said, wait a second, what do you have to do when anybody has a fight? We have to expel the kids. Both kids or one kid? No, both. You don't know who threw the first punch. Okay, how many days? Well, minimum of 3. Great. So every time you have a fist fight, you're going to waste 6 days of attendance. 6 times 40 is 240. With all due respect, principal, I think you'll be break even on this $9,000 in about a month. And her closing ratio was 95%. Why? Because it made sense. Now, when she walked in that door touting something about anti-violence software, do you think the principal had top of mind that he gets his school subsidies based on average daily attendance? Do you think he had any link in his head that every time he expels a couple of kids or suspends a couple of kids, he's losing money? No, she made the connections for you. You could do the same thing. You just need to know what the connections are on a segment-specific basis. Are higher sales more valuable than lighting energy savings? One study showed that 19% higher sales resulted after upgrading to LED lighting. Do you think they made more money on saving energy or by selling more Ben & Jerry's at $6 a pint? How about income property? A lot of people shy away from income property because they don't really understand how these decisions are made. But imagine if you took the time to understand that energy is a huge cost. It's better than 30% of the operating expenses, controllable operating expenses for a commercial piece of real estate, and that savings could boost what's called net operating income, which is the mother's milk of real estate investors. And that net operating income, as it goes higher, brings the asset value up. I could show you, if we had more time, that if you did a lighting retrofit or HVAC controls retrofit and the landlord got X number of cents per square foot more, all of a sudden, the value that he's getting in the increased appraised value, which he can tap out by either a sale or a refinance, would be more than the entire 5 or 10 years worth of energy savings you gave him. It's just the way the math works. And by the way, it's even better. Not only can you get the operating savings through the landlord's lower share of operating expenses, but now you also get higher rents because the building is perceived to be a better, sustained, socially conscious building, and lower vacancy because more people are comfortable there. They don't leave. Okay, So could you reframe the benefits so that they resonate with the segment-specific metrics that are already top of mind? Let's take a look at some data from EPA, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. In nonprofit healthcare, every dollar that a nonprofit healthcare organization saves on energy is equivalent to $20 in new revenues for hospitals and $10 in new revenues for medical office buildings. Every 5% reduction in energy costs can boost earnings per share by a penny if you're in one of these three disciplines. In hospitality, hospitality spends over $4 billion a year in energy. If you reduce that by 10%, it's equivalent to increasing the average daily room rate for every room you sell that year by 62 cents if you're a limited service hotel, or almost $1.50 if you're a full service hotel. Now, in these days of absolute rate transparency for Travelocity and Expedia and cheaphotels.com and Priceline and Hotwire, what do you think the chances are that the CFO could wake up in the middle of the night and say, you know what, our shareholders deserve a better return. Let's just bump the room rates up $1.50 a night and we'll get them the returns that I was envisioning. What do you think is going to happen to market share? But what if he just woke up one night and said, this is ridiculous. We don't have one Energy Star hotel in all of our entire chain. Come on, chop, chop. Let's get some energy savings in these buildings. They pick up 10% energy savings. It's as if he raised the rates. My favorite example is grocery. In grocery, one of the most energy-intensive spaces in the planet, if you reduce the energy waste, you could, by $1 per square foot, it would be the equivalent of having increased sales at $59 a square foot. You could do these calculations, by the way, in the back of an envelope or in your, on your calculator, smartphone. You take the savings that you're going to get, divide by the operating margin of the business, and that gives you how many equivalent dollars of revenue you'd have to get to have this kind of profitability flowing through to your shareholders. Now, what could be even more important than saving energy or even money? Well, for a lot of people, it's reducing carbon emissions. One of the rock stars I interviewed in preparation for this presentation told me that when he goes to sell energy efficiency, he considers himself Carbon Man. I said, Carbon Man? Sounds like you picture this action hero dressed in Batman black with a cape, and if he rubs against you, he leaves a smudge. I mean, well, who's Carbon Man? What are you talking about? He said, I'm selling organizations that have been given statistics. They have to save a certain amount of carbon by a certain year. And guess what? They're not spending their money to do it, and they're not getting any of the energy savings. But if they don't save the carbon, they get slapped on the wrist. Avoiding budget cuts. Any of you who sell state and local governments, the more money they waste on energy, the less money they can spend on firefighters and policemen. Improving safety. Laboratory environments, you get in there with better air quality control, that sort of thing. How about regulatory compliance along those same lines? You allow people to have better visibility on how they use energy and how the built environment is behaving, air quality, lighting levels, security. How about just emulating best practice facilities? Oh my God, I wish my building did that. How about avoiding obsolescence? There are a lot of energy management systems and equivalent hardware that is absolutely nearing or has already exceeded functional obsolescence. Legacy systems that are no longer supported. Why aren't you just getting in those buildings and saying, you know what, enough is enough. Let's get this stuff going before it breaks down, and you're going to have to find the old floppy disk that you used to install it. But, oh, sorry, you no longer have a computer to install it because they don't read those disks anymore. Upgrading to a better user interface. People aren't looking for the hardware. They're looking for the interface. They're looking for the interface. It's not about relays and drives and actuators and panel boards and everything else, because they don't see them, and even if they did see them, they wouldn't know what they were looking at. Okay. One story, one of the things I frequently do in our exercises, I say, let's map a decision-making chain and write down what decision makers were involved the last time you sold a project, and write down what was most important to them. One of the cases was a local municipality in California that was sold on an energy project. I said, well, so what was the deciding factor? Was it lowest bid? No. Was it best price? No. Was it carbon footprint mitigation? No. Demonstration of good governance? No. Went through the whole list. I said, so what sold the job? He said, they realized that if they didn't do this job, they'd have to lay off one of their project managers. Can you imagine how that changes the sales approach if you knew that? I mean, the last thing you want to do is go in there with some, heralding, trumpeting the fact that, boy, you put in our control system, you'll have less payroll. Okay. Energy Star certification, LEED certification. In various places around the country, what was a voluntary pollution prevention program is now mandatory. Where I live and work in San Francisco, They've now made it mandatory that if you have a building over 10,000 square feet, you have to benchmark your building once a year, and you have to give the score to the city. And after a year of confidentiality, it's public. Public. Imagine dirty laundry. California's even gone further. They said when you sell, lease, or refinance an entire building, you have to tell starting this July 1st, just a few months from now, you'll have to tell the counterparty in the real estate transaction what the energy performance of the building is. Can you imagine that wet blanket? You're ready to buy a $100 million building, and someone passes a piece of paper across the table that says on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 17? Whoa, 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 whoa. Why didn't the due diligence report show that this was a pig with lipstick on it? Hold on. We're going to have to sequester a couple $1 million in escrow to fix this building. You can see where that's going.